Hi, I'm Marcus, 31, and my brother just called crying because the IRS froze his company's accounts. The same company he built with my money, then kicked me out of. I know that sounds dramatic, but buckle up, Reddit, because this mess didn't start with the IRS, it started 3 years ago with a handshake. Growing up, Ethan was the golden boy. Always has been. My parents used to say I was the smart one, but not like it was a compliment, more like an apology. Ethan got charm, I got responsibility. When he got a B+, Mom cried tears of joy. When I got into at Austin with a partial scholarship, Dad barely looked up from his turkey and asked me to pass the stuffing. That's been our dynamic forever. Ethan's the visionary. I'm the guy who fixes his screw-ups. Fast forward to adulthood, I'm working a steady job in back-end software development, saving every penny, living in a one-room apartment with an AC that rattled like it was powered by ghosts. Meanwhile, Ethan is bouncing from one failed business to another, a craft beer subscription box that never shipped, a knockoff streetwear brand with typos in the logo, and a series of motivational videos that got fewer views than a PowerPoint on tax law. Then one day, out of nowhere, he calls me. Marcus, I've got something real this time. I just need your help. Now, normally, help from Ethan meant bail me out again, but this time he sounded different, serious, focused. He had a business plan. Real 1. Market research. Financial projections. He'd identified a gap in the marketing world. Mid-sized B2B companies who couldn't afford big agencies but were too complex for small ones. And for once, it actually made sense. He needed $100,000 to launch. He had $25,000 saved. I had $75,000, and just like that, over beers in Denver, we made a handshake deal. I'd invest the $75,000 and handle all the back-end systems. He'd run the client side. We'd be 50/50ths partners once the company went profitable. Bro, I'm not going to screw you over, he said, looking me dead in the eye. Yeah, about that. I wired the money the next week. My entire life savings. Then I spent 2 years building his entire company's infrastructure from scratch, databases, project systems, client reporting, automation. Meanwhile, he was posting entrepreneur life selfies in front of a leased BMW, and when the company took off, when it hit $2 million in revenue and I asked for our partnership agreement in writing, he told me I was not involved day-to-day anymore. That bringing me in would complicate the cap table translation. You're out. He offered to repay me $75,000 at $500 a month. Like a damn car loan. I walked out of that office and told him to keep it, the money, the business, all of it. But I promised myself one thing as I drove back to Austin that night. I'd build something better. And I did. 2 years later, I did exactly what I said I would. I built my company quietly, efficiently, and without a single motivational speech or BMW photo shoot. While Ethan was busy hosting Entrepreneur Brunch and posting hustle culture quotes, I was in my apartment writing code at 3 a.m. My startup, Proxyline, started as a side project, a tool that automated multi-platform analytics for small agencies. But within a year, word spread. Clients loved it. I hired a small remote team. Within 18 months, we hit 7 figures in our Ethan. Meanwhile, stopped showing up on social media. Then one night, I saw a Reddit thread, a marketing agency accused of data laundering. They'd been using client ad budgets to pump up fake engagement, recycling leftover funds into crypto wallets. Guess whose company name was all over the screenshots? Ethan's. I didn't gloat. Okay, that's a lie. I definitely poured myself a drink and watched the fallout. But the thing about karma is, it rarely hits clean. There's always collateral damage. 3 months later, I got a call. Ethan, crying, said the IRS had frozen his company accounts, that he was under investigation for tax irregularities. I almost hung up. But he said something that made me pause. They're saying the back-end systems point to you. I laughed. What are you talking about? I haven't touched your servers in years. Then he said it, the line that flipped my stomach. Marcus, the codebase still has your name on it, all of it. They think you built the structure that's hiding the money, and that's when it hit me. I did build it. Every automation, every routing function, every data script, all the tools I'd created for him before he cut me out, they were still in there. And if the IRS was digging through the logs, they'd find my fingerprints all over the crime. The next morning, I woke up to 3 missed calls from an unknown DC number and 1 from a special agent El Porter. Not exactly the kind of notifications that make you want to get out of bed. I called back, half expecting some prank. It wasn't. The voice on the other end was calm, professional, and way too specific. She asked if I could come in to clarify my role in a data handling infrastructure for Brightspire Media LLC, Ethan's company. By the time I got to their field office, I was sweating through my shirt. They sat me down in one of those bare rooms, grey walls, a metal table, and a single cup of water like they were doing me a favor. Agent Porter slid a folder toward me. Inside was screenshots of my old code, commented, dated, even versioned with my Git handle. Every single automation Ethan's team used to reroute ad funds had my original framework underneath it. Mr. Hale, she said, can you explain why these payment scripts are signed with your credentials? I told her the truth, that I'd built the skeleton years ago when the company was legit, that Ethan locked me out, changed passwords, and kept using my work. She just nodded, took notes, and said, we'll need to verify that with your brother. I laughed, the kind of laugh you only make when you're this close to panic. Good luck getting him to tell the truth. But here's the kicker, 2 hours later, when I checked my phone, I had a new voicemail. Ethan again, whispering this time. They're going to pin it on me, Marcus. But if I go down, you're coming with me. Then, a pause, breathing. Unless you help me fix this, he hung up before I could respond. And for the first time since I walked away from him, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just his mess anymore. If the feds couldn't untangle the code, they'd assume we built it together. And Ethan, he wasn't asking for help. He was setting the stage for his next con. That night I didn't eat, didn't sleep. I just sat in front of my monitor staring at a repo I hadn't touched in 3 years. Every line of code felt radioactive. The more I scrolled, the worse it got. Ethan hadn't just reused my systems, he'd modified them. Hidden subroutines, shell transfers, random wallet addresses embedded in loggers. It was brilliant, in a sociopathic way. Every transaction looked legitimate until you followed the breadcrumbs long enough to realize it looped right back into a private account. His and the creator tag was still mine. So I did what any panicked ex-founder with too much coffee and too little sense would do. I broke back in, pulled an old token I still had stored in a forgotten sandbox, tunneled through their dev API, and watched the data stream populate. Thousands of transactions, tens of millions. And buried in the middle, a single wallet that didn't belong to Ethan, mine. I just sat there, blinking. It had been created 6 months ago, my name, my old credentials, my old verification signature. Someone had fabricated me into the laundering loop. The moment I realized what that meant, my laptop pinged. Incoming message. Untraceable address. You shouldn't have logged in, Marcus. I froze. Then another ping, my security camera app lit up. The feed from my front porch, Ethan standing there in the dark, hands in his pockets, looking straight into the camera like he knew exactly when I'd see it. He smiled, that same easy, confident smile he'd always had, and mouthed the words I could read perfectly even without audio, you owe me, and then the feed cut to static. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of Ethan, exactly, but because my brain refused to stop running scenarios. Every logical path led to disaster. If I reported him, I risked dragging myself into a mess of fraud charges. If I stayed silent, he could frame me for everything he'd done. And if I confronted him, well, he clearly wasn't afraid of confrontation. I should have known I was opening a door I couldn't close. But hell, I was tired of being the guy who let doors slam shut on him. When I triggered the backdoor, I didn't do anything flashy. No theatrical keystrokes or Hollywood displays. I quietly pulled a clean export, transaction logs, IP hops, timestamped API calls, wallet addresses, and the routing that funneled funds into offshore shells. I packaged it the way auditors like, chronological, annotated, and impossible to dismiss as misconfiguration. Ethan watched me with that same smug grin until the first file loaded on his laptop and reality began to tear his face like wet paper. He tried to laugh it off, the reflex of a man used to social denial, then tried threats, then pleading, then every variant of manipulation in the book. I recorded all of it. Audio, video, timestamps on the files. If he wanted theatre, I gave him a stage and a camera. Give me one reason I shouldn't take this to Agent Porter right now, I said. He swallowed. For the first time, he was quieter than his excuses. You take this to the feds, they'll trace it, he said. They'll see what? I cut in. That my name is on code you bastardized and that you forged my signatures into money channels. That you used my systems to launder money. Yeah, that's the point. He started bargaining. 10% equity, a settlement, a promissory note, anything to keep me silent. He even offered the clients, like he could just hand people over like props. The desperation was ugly. It made him small in a way nothing else had. Here's what I did. I gave him a choice, but not the one he expected. I told him I'd walk into Agent Porter's office the next morning with everything I'd exported. No accusations from me, just raw evidence, full chain of custody, and a recorded confession if he gave one. In exchange, I asked for two things: a notarized admission of full culpability from him to protect me from civil claims and a binding settlement to reimburse the $75,000 plus interest within 6 months, or the settlement would be folded into the evidence package I handed over to the prosecutors. No equity, no apologies that weren't on paper. I wanted the money returned or legally accounted for. I wanted the record clear that I did not collude. He tried to stall, he begged, he appealed to whatever blood he thought we shared. When that failed, he made one last, stupid move. He lunged for my laptop. That was the moment my adrenaline kicked in and, for whatever reason, muscle memory from late nights of system hardening, I'd already anticipated. I pulled a quick physical maneuver I'd learned moving servers in tiny office elevators and turned his momentum into the door. He hit the concrete. The look he gave me from the floor was comic in a way that would have killed me with laughter if it hadn't been so pathetic. I left him there and drove straight to the field office. Agent Porter met me in the lobby like she already suspected I had something good. I handed over the packet, logs, exports, annotated chain of custody notes, and the rough video of Ethan bargaining and attempting to access my machine. No theatrics. No, I saved the day. Just evidence. Her face went from professional to something that looked like satisfaction, the good kind, where a case finally fits together. She paused before she slid the paperwork back. You understand there will be a process, she said, and we'll need everything verified. I did. I understood. Verification meant subpoenas, interviews, maybe even an indictment. But there was also another thing I needed verified, that I hadn't been complicit. To protect myself, I'd already anonymized certain elements and created a parallel chain showing I only re-entered the system from my current IP during this phase, after Ethan had modified things. I had logs from before he changed passwords. I had screenshots of his responses to my intervention. I wasn't perfect in the mess of it, but I was not the architect of the criminal additions. I'd been the scaffolding he used to build the mess. 2 weeks of interviews, depositions, and sleepless clarity followed. Ethan was arrested. The prosecutors moved fast because the paper trail was messy and ugly for him. Shell companies, falsified expense reports, and a network of transfers that had his handwriting all over. He took a plea bargain eventually. No prison time, but heavy fines, restitution, probation, and a ban from certain business activities. The company dissolved. Clients moved on. People who had been tarnished by association quietly rebranded. The settlement. It came through. Not the full $75,000 overnight. The courts and trustees and bankruptcy mess made that impossible. But a structured recovery. And more importantly, a legal acknowledgement that I had not participated in the fraud. It wasn't about the money anymore, really. It was about not being the man who got railroaded. Family fallout was predictable and ugly. Mom cried. Dad called me names again and then asked for help paying the hospital bill for Ethan's wrist. After his fall, the hypocrisy was so vivid I almost sent him the recorded clip of Dad encouraging Ethan to make the business decisions when I confronted them years ago. I didn't want to feed the fire. Instead, I blocked numbers, filtered emails, and slowly let space be the thing that healed as much as it could. A few people surprised me. My uncle, the one who'd privately apologized in an earlier email, brought me a beer and said, "You did the right thing." To former employees from Ethan's company I'd hired earlier thrived under my management. They told me the office culture I'd prioritized, pay on time, equity, real people policies meant more than a paycheck. That felt like a real win. And the company, Proxyline, kept growing. Being cleared publicly meant no more whispers about being the shadow behind Ethan's mess. In the months following, I doubled down on transparency, audited systems, third-party monitoring, client-accessible logs, the kind of boring, responsible work that attracts the sort of clients who pay reliably and sleep at night. We opened the Seattle office like I'd planned. Jessica, my assistant who'd kept everything running during the chaos, became coach. She deserved it and we both knew it. Ethan, he tried LinkedIn redemption posts for a while. They read like a former frat brother doing damage control, growth, failure, resilience. People muted him. A few clients who'd been his stars quietly reached out to me, not to gloat, but because they needed stability. I helped where appropriate, hired the good ones, and kept my distance from the rest. Did I forgive him? Not in any clean, cinematic way. Forgiveness felt premature. Trust had been atomized. But I stopped carrying the fury like a map. That weight had kept me awake longer than it deserved. Instead, I channeled what remained into building, governance, better contracts, clear partner agreements, and most importantly, enforceable legal terms. Handshakes live in stories. Legal documents live in courts. When the dust settled, a friend asked me if I felt vindicated. I said, yeah, for a second, then I added, but vindication is cheap. Stability is earned, and that felt true. Money came back in dribs and drabs. Reputation rebuilt itself and then grew. More importantly, the people who mattered, my team, my clients who had become friends, the few relatives who didn't choose blind loyalty over truth, were still there. If there's a lesson, it's not the one you see in clickbait. Don't do business with family. The lesson is practical. Put things in writing. Value your work. And when someone shows you who they are, believe them. Also, learn how to document your contributions like a grown-up. Timestamps, signed emails, those boring logs you think nobody will read someday, because someday the boring stuff saves you. In the end, the guy who'd built the plumbing of someone else's dream ended up building his own house, with a better foundation, better insulation, and a lock on the front door. I still think about Ethan sometimes, not with the burning need for revenge, but with a peculiar, exhausted pity. He's an easy character to hate and a harder one to pity, and both truths can be true at once. I kept the old Git handle active for a while, like a stub of something I'd once entrusted to the past. Then one night, after a long week of real work and 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep, I deleted that old sandbox completely. No theatrics, no confession, just a clean break. And in the quiet after that, between a beer with my uncle and a board meeting in Seattle, I laughed at how dramatic everything had been. Not because it wasn't awful, it was, but because life's messes are often equal parts tragedy and absurdity. You play the cards you're dealt, shuffle when you can, and sometimes you get to build something better out of the wreckage. So here I am, still the smart one if anyone wants to call me that. But now I'm choosing who I spend my smarts on. I protect my team, pay my taxes on time, and keep a legally notarized copy of every handshake in my desk drawer just in case. Thanks for sticking with the story. If you take anything away from it, make it this. Documents are love letters to your future self. Morning came. I went to my local coffee shop, laptop in hand, pretending I was working on some new freelance project. But in reality, I was tracing every single transaction, every shell company, every API call Ethan had set up. I wanted to understand the scope, the whole tangled mess of his empire. By noon, I had it. He'd been siphoning funds into offshore accounts under fake identities for over a year, all automated through the systems I built. But here's the kicker. He'd left a single oversight, something only someone with intimate knowledge of the code could notice. And that oversight, a backdoor that I, and only I, could access. I sat back and let it sink in. I had the leverage, not the money, not the clients, but the power to expose him. And that's when my phone buzzed again. It was a message from an unknown number. We need to talk, face to face. No cops, no games. 8 p.m., Warehouse District. I knew it had to be Ethan. I considered ignoring it, walking away, letting the IRS sort it out. But something in me, the same thing that had spent years building his empire while he took the credit, told me, no, I was done hiding, done being the backup plan, Done being the smart one who cleaned up someone else's mess. 8 p.m. came. I drove to the warehouse district, hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. The streets were empty, the kind of emptiness that makes you realize how small you really are in a city of millions. The warehouse loomed ahead, dark, abandoned, except for the faint glow of a laptop screen visible through a high window. And there he was, Ethan, waiting, smiling. "Glad you came," he said as I stepped inside. "I was worried you might bring reinforcements." I didn't answer. I just pulled out my laptop, fingers hovering over the keyboard. "You realize," he continued, "that everything I've done, I could bury you. And you know it." "Yeah," I said. "But you forgot one thing," and I opened the back door I had discovered, the one only I could use. For the first time in 3 years, Ethan looked nervous. "Marcus, you wouldn't," I smiled. A slow, deliberate smile. "Watch me." The game had changed.